I want to give you guys a nice little tidbit about British culture pseudoscience to kickstart today's video. Today is Blue Monday. Yes, according to this nerd shit Sky Travel did in 2005, today is supposedly the most depressing day of the year on account of all the good holidays from last year ending and the weather being a bit shit. Unless the weather's actually pretty good today, then this entire setup and upload date was for nothing. Never work on deadlines, kids. So chances are you're a little down in the dumps, and I seek to amend that, because the main characteristics of my channel, amongst other things, are positivity and optimism. And maybe a little bit of disdain. Not to mention, as it is indeed a happy new year, our main objective to kickstart 2019 is to push away any negative energy that has held us down the year before. And what better way to do that than to be incredibly polarized about the remaster of a PS2 game, but the game's all happy and colourful and shit, so why not? Katamari Damacy Reroll, the ultimate competitor to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, or at least Bamco thought so because they decided to release Reroll on the same fucking day. And Ultimate's a really good game, FYI, best entry in the series. I main Cloud, Game & Watch, Palutena, and Zelda, don't at me. I initially intended to hold off on covering Katamari for a while, but then this remaster entered the scene and I wanted to piggyback off what little relevance it had left, mostly because of the fact that I have a romantic and possibly sexual relationship with the Katamari series. Except you. You're actually dreadful. When you were a kid, did you ever have that one game, like the one you had and loved ever since you were a little babu, that was so obscure and unheard of that before you discovered the internet was a thing, you were actually convinced that this fantastic tome of wonderment was made specifically for you and no one else had it? Well, for me it was We Love Katamari on the PS2. The second game, but technically the first one in Europe because the original Katamari Damacy never released over here. But anyway, yeah, We Love Katamari. Basically in the top 5 of my favourite games of all time that I've had ever since I was the small age of 7, and single-handedly made me love video games and Japanese culture. And I am fully convinced that even past the rose tints, unless someone makes a 2 to 3 hour video essay with some lo-fi hip-hop music, beats to study, relaxed to chilled cow, about how it's bad actually, I think We Love Katamari still holds up today and provides some interesting lessons to learn about game design. But maybe for later, because it's sitting on my list of games I really want to cover but don't want to do right this moment until my channel's grown a little bit more. In fact, I still have my original copy of the game that I've had ever since I was small, including the most adorable manual ever, a picture book that teaches you the controls and mechanics, and it even has the black and white page that I coloured in with crayons. But I guess I'm kind of a fake fan because I can't say I played every game in the series. It actually took me a while to realise there were even other games. I've only played 4 of the 6 mainline physically released Katamari games, and I'd only say 2 of those are really worth playing. This remaster was actually my very first time beating Katamari Damacy, so essentially, is this remaster worth it, or are you better off just playing the sequels on older hardware? And to that I say, it's complicated. It's very complicated, but let's go into detail. Katamari Damacy Reroll is the PC and Nintendo Switch remaster of the original Katamari Damacy on the PS2, which only released in Japan and North America. Yeah, it's not on PS4, it's hilarious. An action, kinda puzzle game that's like if you cranked the LOJs, that being level of Japanese up to 11, and still somehow made it appropriate for children. The objective being simple: as the Prince of all Cosmos, you must control an adhesive ball called a Katamari over objects and make it larger and replace one of the stars that your father, the King of all Cosmos, destroyed from being a drunk ass. And you'd think I'm kidding, but let's just say the Japanese version's more apparent. It's fun when you get into Katamari thinking it's gonna be all rainbows and puppies, then oops, the King of all Cosmos just got into a fucking knife fight and lost his pompadour. Now, Katamari's a very simple concept, and truth be told, I do plan on going more in depth about its gameplay and its director, family man and professional shitposter Keita Takahashi when I eventually get around to covering We Love Katamari, because it's my bae, but for now, I want to focus more on Damacy Reroll as a remaster and whether or not the original Damacy is worth playing when you have the other entries available. Also, full disclosure, I'm reviewing the PC version, so I can't really speak for the Switch version. Play the demo, give it a shot, treat yourself. Remasters are a pretty mad grey area in games because they come in all shapes and sizes, and I ain't talking about the glitzy-ass ground-up remakes and engines that don't exist. Sometimes a remaster's big, small, it's a collection for a discounted price, takes advantage of new hardware, adds improvements made in later entries, but in the case of Reroll, and this is me being as polite as possible, calling it a remaster is even stretching it because it's more a port if anything. Minus a couple of functions and settings respective to the platforms it's on, Damacy Reroll isn't that different to the ISO you could boot up on PCSX2 right this instant. On PC, the game runs in 1080p, but funnily enough it hits this weird frame rate purgatory where it's uncapped and can run well above 60, but the game world and the Katamari's movements are still capped at 30. I honestly don't know why this is the case, but my only possible assumptions are either the PS2 source code is locked down tight, or the Katamari's physics are tied to the frame rate or something. Kinda like how Dark Souls freaks out when you try to play it in 60. Basically, you don't get any distinct advantages playing on PC other than the graphic settings and the jankiest keyboard controls imaginable. Tip number 1. Everyone, get a controller. For the love of God, please save yourself and get a damn controller. I'm someone who will defend Katamari's original control scheme to the moon and back and might cause some bloodshed over it. Polygon, what the fuck are you actually talking about? Because Takahashi, being the Giga Galaxy brain that he is, was basically enamored by the design of the DualShock 2. Like, he's actually gone on record saying he hated gimmicks like motion controls and the Wii U gamepad, simply because he believed there were still millions of other things that could be done with a standard controller. And for the most part, he was right and introduced the most adorable control scheme to ever grace mankind, where you push both analog sticks like they're two hands pushing the Katamari, tilting them in different positions to pull off different maneuvers and navigating the prints around it. Seriously, if you want to turn the Katamari, you don't just move the right stick to turn, you have to move the right stick to make the prints walk around the Katamari. It's the cutest shit. Reroll does have simplified controls for boring people, where the left stick moves and the right stick and triggers control the camera, but not only are the default bindings some fucking insanity, but I feel like while it has a bit of a learning curve, the original control scheme was perfect for giving players way more precise control long term as they play through the series. And the way the physics and the weight of the Katamari are impacted throughout, it does feel like you're pushing this heavy object rather than being the thing and directly controlling its trajectory. That said, the classic controls do not work on a keyboard, and you can rebind the keys, just not in a way that emulates the standard controls. W and I to move forward is a control prompt that makes me want to uninstall my existence. End this insanity and buy yourself a damn controller.
No, Joe, bad, we're being positive today.
So the burning question on the table, is the original Katamari Damacy worth playing in 2019? And if it's your first time, go right ahead. If it means one more person playing this blessed series in the world, I'll bite that bullet. Minus a bunch of additions and refinements, Katamari's formula hasn't changed dramatically over the years, and honestly can get pretty exhausting after your third game or so. But when going into things fresh, Damacy still acts as a nice introduction with great music, great visuals, and just really satisfying gameplay. But please keep in mind that any issues you have could potentially be fixed and improved in later entries. For example, my biggest issue with the series, and especially in Damacy, is that it's always liked reusing the same maps across multiple levels, like Takahashi just spent the entire game's budget on worms on strings. But not only is that gradually resolved with later games, except the bad Vita game, but the game right after this, We Love Katamari, was so much more resourceful about it, using the same maps but still giving you new areas to explore each time, or changing the objective to something other than reaching a certain size or amount in a certain time limit. We Love Katamari also had a better soundtrack, don't at me. But if you've played any of the other games, there's honestly not a whole lot to see other than what can be summed up as a very underdeveloped level pack. The maps get reused so frequently, the time limit is super lenient compared to the other games, which makes it way too easy to clean the entire stage with minutes to spare. The Katamari never gets as large as it does in later games, and it's just missing a lot of the pop and flair that it gave itself over time as it grew. In summary, Katamari Damacy Reroll is a little on the underwhelming side, and a bit of a mixed bag depending on who plays it. It's fine as a first experience, but it doesn't really offer anything for anyone who's played an entry already, especially considering how you could go onto Amazon right now and just get Katamari Forever on PS3, a tribute game with all the best levels bundled with all the new content and mechanics. The only reason I'd recommend Reroll is the possibility that if it does well, Bamco will be inclined to remaster the better Katamari game, and everyone online's been rallying together to show that we need more Katamari in our life. But considering the series' original director only stuck around for 2 games and the last full entry we got was completely mediocre, let's just say I'm not going to be pulling any punches if a new game does happen. But none of that changes the fact that, well, look at it, it's still unique and endearing, and it's one of the cheaper remasters I've seen, so at least there's a degree of modesty about it. I adore this series, it's had a part to play in cementing my passions in life, and it's probably what you need to play to get all those bad feelings out, but yeah, don't worry, you didn't miss anything when you were busy playing Smash Bros. Happy Blue Monday! Demand more from your remasters. Emulate We Love Katamari instead. The Prince's new design is fucking terrible and I hate it.